Is gardening still worth it? I will undoubtedly say... Hello. Cary on Gardening here, interrupting your regular garden vlogging to answer this very pressing question on all your minds. Is gardening worth it? I'm not sure if anyone else remembers, but there used to be this great big circle in the sky that emitted heat and light. It seems that this giant disc has completely bypassed the UK this year, along with hope, prosperity, nightclubs, and cheap coffee. The Met Office is saying this could be the coldest summer in the last 24 years. We would have to go back to the late 90s, a time where things like living was affordable, cartoons and movies were good, and... sorry, pardon my nostalgia. So what is the cause of this? The Royal Meteorological Society states that it is the positioning of this thing called the jet stream. The jet stream is supposed to basically go on a Scottish holiday for summer, but this year has found itself specifically in the southern counties. One must wonder where this air current got its money from, or, like millennials, have had to rely on the bank of mum and dad. So with that, the warm air that is supposed to be here isn't. And so far this year, we are finding ourselves almost 2.5 degrees cooler than average on an already mild and average island. And what has this weather brought? Well, let me tell you. The year started out extremely mild. We somehow managed to go through winter without having to sell our organs because it seemed like the cold, the real cold, never came. Spring saw days in the 20s and the garden seemed at times to be 6 weeks early. Rhododendrons blooming in April, daffodils keeling over due to spring heat waves. And meanwhile, while the flowers were all going topsy-turvy wondering what on earth was going on, the arch nemesis of the gardener was biding its time, proliferating in the mild winter and the rich damp weather that followed. Slugageddon. Take this anecdotally. I did everything in my power to mitigate this scourge of the garden, this pirate of perennials. I sat there proud that I had collected all of last year's garden waste, bagged all the autumn leaves so they would have nowhere to hide, and it was all in vain. I made 2 standing ponds in order to schmooze my way into frog society, and 1 bog with a stairway that even my 95-year-old grandma could comfortably navigate. I bound and bundled branches too big for composting to attract our adorable little hedgehog friends, all so they could feed upon the delicious slugs and snails that were surely accumulating in my garden. And you know what? They never came. And even worse, when I tell you in my decade or so of gardening, I have never seen such a biblical apocalypse unleashed on the earth. The volume of them, the tenacity of them. In 2 nights of picking them off with my own hands, the quantity of them left my gloves glued together as if I had been clapping over open bottles of superglue. I had to pick them off things they supposedly hate, like cat mints and sage. They were so rampant, they had developed broader culinary tastes. And from what I saw on various online garden forums, because I'm cool like that, mine and many others' gardens had become the Vegas standard of gastronomy for our gastropod enemies. All in all, I lost hundreds of pounds worth of Peruvian lilies, giant rudbeckias, all the catmint, all the salvias, loads of red-hot poker flower stalks, and more. And this was with repeated slug hunts and hand-picking. Not to mention the amount of aphids of which completely vandalized a honeysuckle, red lily beetle, and more. It has been an absolute battle with garden pests this year, and while I am an organic gardener in so much as I have not used a single poison on this garden, I started to question whether it was worth it or whether it was best to turn to the dark side. And if this hadn't left me wondering if this was worth it anymore, I made a choice at the beginning of the year that I wasn't going to be doing vegetables this year. I know. However, I have read and dread what is going to come for the fateful gardeners out there that saw that beautiful Spring that so sullenly slipped right through our gloved hands and hoarded every single seed or seedling of every salad ingredient at their local garden centres, thinking they were going to curb the rampant food inflation of the past few years, and with the most amazing crop Britain has seen since 2016. And how my heart goes out to you now. I have no idea, nor does anyone, if this weather will shift and give us the heat and sunlit days in order for fruiting and ripening to occur, but it does not look good. And if everything I learnt about farming from Clarkson's farm is any indication, I hazard to think what the next half of the year has in store for farmers and their crops and the well-being of the good citizens of this once great country. Over the past couple of years, we have seen record levels of inflation, and this has extended to the world of gardening. Bags of compost seem to be on average £2 dearer, and producers have sneakily taken the 50-litre bag as standard and turned them into 40-litre bags, while keeping prices the same, of course. Tradesmen charging even more extortionate prices. And of course, over the past 5 years, I've noticed the online catalogue of plant shopping going from perhaps £12 for a 2-litre pot to almost 20. Gardening has always had this air of the bourgeois, as ultimately you need land in order to do it. And not only that, but sacrifice this coveted land for nothing more than pretty ornaments in lieu of food and livestock. However, when I do make the insipid journeys into the stinkhole we call London, when the trains can be bothered to run on time, I'm noticing more and more apartment balconies and buildings adorned with plants and little gardens. I think there are more people now than ever curious and interested in plants and nature. I do believe also that there are and always have been ways to garden and grow things very, very cheaply. From your supermarket produce, where you can harvest the seeds, to packet seeds, cuttings, and gifts, there are ways. In the world of gardening, you typically pay for 3 things: soil improvement, time, and rarity. There are solutions in these. Contact someone with horses, as they will give you manure. Search on listings like Free Cycle to get some jazzy ornaments or hardscaping material. And when it comes to plants, sacrifice time by growing from seed, or simply, and not that I'm promoting this or have ever done this myself, but perhaps you notice a lovely shrub on your street that you covet. You should never pinch off a shoot and make a cutting for free. Never. Never, never. You will be surprised how quickly things can grow within a few months or a year. Gardening can ultimately be as budget-friendly as what you want, and I believe it to be true anyway, that the patient, low-budget gardener who grows a tree from a humble seed lives with more satisfaction than those who pay thousands to buy past 10 years. Very much like the people in London do. So, with gardeners alike facing the worst year ever for pests, prize plants, and hopes of a flowerific summer, sat in the garden sipping on a G&T with factor 50 slathered over our aging bodies in one last-ditch attempt to preserve the youth we are still clinging on to, with our wallets and purses nearby, witnessing one of the coldest and wettest years in our lifetimes, and importantly, perhaps a lot of money spent to simply make these spaces we occupy nice, nestful, and inviting, because after all this, the nature, the flowers, the balance of predatory insect and pest, and our local native wildlife, it is food for the soul and for the spirit. But can we ultimately say right now, this year, is gardening worth it? In spite of all that, the wet, the wind, the fight, we as gardeners ultimately have to accept all weathers, all years. We are always at the mercy of Mother Nature. We have to accept that even the practice of what we do, this hobby of ours, is unnatural. And to a degree, it is a vanity project as it pertains to having this control and orchestration over the natural world which we simply can never overcome. We can do all these things that we are told will be of benefit to our spaces, to our wildlife, to try and create balance via conducting a helping hand here, a prune there, and water everywhere. But if we are not receptive to the good, then yes, you, the gardener of this year, will not find much worth at all. However, I implore you, gardener, I challenge you to go for a walk and look at the hydrangeas this year, because the ones in my area are cluffed in flowers like I have never seen them before. Summer clematis are flowering in full force. I've noticed bigger and brighter. Geraniums, while always a tough and reliable border favourite amongst gardeners, have been flowering and growing extra prolifically this year. Lilies are still adorning us with massive blooms and their strong scent. All plants that like the comfort of shade and moist roots are having a cracking year. In fact, for the things the slugs have spared, and too the shrubs and trees, have all looked extra glossy, extra leafy this year. This perpetual spring, the rain, these temperatures, remember, are still affecting things you cannot see. Root systems growing stronger day by day, empowering your plants for years to come, and fungi are probably rejoicing. Let's not forget the droughty summer of a couple years past and how everyone's lawns were a lovely shade of tan. That problem does not exist this year. What this year has wrought is undoubtedly and perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime downpour. And I don't mean rain. As a gardener myself, it has been hard to not feel down about the weather, the extraordinary amount of pests, the lost plants and time and money and efforts, all to see it washed away. But remember, we have weathered so many storms, and we have to, as gardeners. Our hand is not there to control or to be used as weapons to fight the unfightable, but merely to help, to lend a hand to this great cacophony of plants and wildlife, to make a nest we feel proud of, and to share what we think is beautiful. And if we focus on being malleable and find the good, we will be at one with the passing and coming of the years, that no 2 days does your garden look exactly the same, and that some years, like this one, just make that statement a lot less subtly. If anything, the pride of this country comes from exactly that. Keep calm and carry on. And indeed, if you ask me, is gardening still worth it? I will undoubtedly say yes, and carry on gardening.